Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and how are you all doing today? Today we're going to be doing a slightly different video to what I would normally do. I'm going to be doing not a video in response, but because of. I watched Sargon's The Week That Was for yesterday, and he went into the fact of trying to say that Jeremy Corbyn is not an anti-Semite. Now, I'm not going to say that Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite or he isn't an anti-Semite in this little video. But what I am actually going to prove to you is the fact that he lets anti-Semitism rage on and through his party and political allegiances, should we say. Now, I wanted to make this abundantly clear. Because somebody does not do anything, does not make him an anti-Semite. But at the same time, if you don't do anything and you are the leader of a political party or as a actual leader of anything, and you condone or you do not act on what is going on, then unfortunately you need to be held accountable, as you are the leader and the one that is setting up what is going on. So with that being said, let's jump into this video, and we're going to start off with why Labour decided that they were going to change the definition of anti-Semitism. Yeah, let's do that, shall we? So, just to actually start off, welcome back, and look at the title that we have at this moment in time. Labour wrong not to use a full anti-Semitism definition in Code of Conduct, Sir Keir Starmer says. So, why are they the only political party, or the only people, that have decided to change the definition of what anti-Semitism means? Is it because they might have a problem? Is it because that they might be dealing with something that they have to actually deal with, and rather than dealing with it, they just change the definition of it? I don't know. Let's have a quick read. For anybody that's interested, I got a feeling that this video might be a bit longer than normal, but we'll get there. So, Sir Keir Starmer has criticised Labour's policy on anti-Semitism amid a row over the party's strategy for tackling anti-Jewish abuse. The shadow Brexit secretary said it was really important that the party listened to the people who have criticised it for refusing to adopt a widely recognised definition of anti-Semitism. So again, I ask you, why would you change the definition if you did not have a problem? It comes after Labour was heavily criticised for saying it would not adopt the full International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the IHRA, definition of anti-Semitism, which includes a list of examples. So why would you not adopt what Jewish people that actually want the actual definition, that is the basically world-renowned versions and international adoption of what it means to be anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic? Why would you change that? Why would you want to change the definition when everybody else internationally accepts the same definition? Is there a problem somewhere in this aspect? I don't know. Let's ask somebody like Tom Watson. So this is what Tom Watson, the deputy leader, has to say about what's going on at the minute. Tom Watson, Labour faces internal shame over anti-Semitism. Again, why are people claiming that inside the party that anti-Semitism is going on? Again, it doesn't make the fact that Jeremy Corbyn is the anti-Semite, it makes the fact that he's allowing anti-Semitism to go on. It's the same thing as if you had somebody actually calling other people racist in a party or in a place of work. They would have to be fired, and the leaders would have to take responsibility to fire them. Well, guess what? In this instance and in this case, Jeremy Corbyn is not taking that responsibility. Ask yourself why. So Labour's deputy leader, Tom Watson, says that the party will disappear into a vortex of internal shame and embarrassment and render itself unfit for government unless it calls an immediate halt to damaging arguments over anti-Semitism. Speaking to The Observer, Watson called on Jeremy Corbyn to drop without delay internal inquiries into 2 Labour MPs, Margaret Hodge and Ian Austin, who both lost family members in the Holocaust and now face a possible disciplinary charges after furious outburst over the party's stance on anti-Semitism. And by stance, they mean changing the definition of how they see anti-Semitism. As it goes on to say, Watson also said Corbyn should immediately adopt the full International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, along with all its examples, a move the party continues to resist. Why? Why does it continue to resist? Why does it do this? In order to prevent the row engulfing the party throughout the entire summer period, or in fact, as long as Jeremy Corbyn is leader and more stories are coming up of anti-Semitism from within the Labour Party. From within the Labour Party. So I now want to go on to giving you a couple of accounts that have actually happened to some of these Labour supporters that are Jewish. And even in the context, please listen to what they are saying and please understand what's going on. After we've done this, we'll move on to Jeremy Corbyn.
If the House would indulge me, I would like to read out a small sample of what I have received on social media. But before I do, I have to thank the dedicated team at CST who have protected me, shielded me from as much of this abuse as possible, and worked with the police on the occasions when abuse became threats. As others have said, they shouldn't be necessary, but personally, I'd be lost without them. They've also worked their way through the thousands of pieces of anti-Semitic abuse I've received to provide the following greatest hits. Though I must warn the House that my fan base has shown scant regard for appropriate parliamentary language, so I apologise in advance. Hang yourself, you vile, treacherous Zionist Tory filth, you are a cancer of humanity. Ruth Smead is a Zionist. She has no shame and trades on the murder of Jews by Hitler, who the Zionists betrayed. Ruth Smead must surely be travelling first class to Tel Aviv with all that slush. After all, she's complicit in trying to bring Corbyn down. First job for Jeremy Corbyn tomorrow, expel the Zionist bicom smear hag bitch Ruth Smead from the party. This Ruth Smead is Britanniophobic. We need to cleanse our nation of these types. Hashtag JC for PM. Deselect Ruth Smead ASAP. Poke the pig. Get all the Zionist child skiller scum out of Labour. You are a spy. You are evil, satanic. Leave. Hashtag Labour. Hashtag Corbyn. Ruth, you are a Zionist plant. I'm ashamed you are in Labour, better suited to the murderous Knesset. Hashtag I support Ken. Your fellow traitor Tony Blair abolished hanging for treason. Your kind need to leave before we bring it back. Hashtag Smead is filth.
Yeah. Can I just say, on behalf of all members of this House, we should pay tribute to our honourable friends for the 2 Liverpool constituencies, which is a sacred reminder at this moment. We are enormously proud of her and everything that she does for us.
Thank you. And for my final piece of abuse, the gallows would be a fine and fitting place for this dyke piece of weird shit to swing from. This is merely a snapshot, and those that I would feel comfortable, if that is a thing, to say in this place. A glimpse into the abuse that now seems par for the course for any Jew who has the audacity to participate in.
So, we have a lot to unpack there, don't we? Remember that everybody was calling her a Tory for being able to support what she wants, or just because that she's a Jew and has a different opinion to what they do? Interesting, isn't it? Should we go on to a different point now? I think we should. So now what we're going to do is, we're actually going to be talking about Jeremy Corbyn. Yes, we're actually going to be talking about the actual man, the myth, the legend himself. We're actually going to go back to when he was a prospect for Labour leader. When the Telegraph actually wrote a really good piece about him and everything that he's also done and said and been with, and, you know, just the actual facts, I suppose. So what we're actually going to do is that we're going to now switch over, and we're actually going to have a little read about what we're going to be doing. So without further ado, oh, sorry, pun intended, let's carry on, shall we? So the Jeremy Corbyn campaign for release of embassy bombers. Or should I say, Jeremy Corbyn campaigned for the release of embassy bombers. Jeremy Corbyn, the frontrunner for the Labour leadership, spent more than a decade campaigning for Jawad Botma and Samir Al-Mili after they were convicted for their role in a car bombing. And an actual quote here is, Jawad's cause is, I believe, a miscarriage of justice. And this was a letter that he wrote to the Metropolitan University. So this is done by a Mr. Stephen Swinford, who's the Deputy Political Editor. So let's carry on and read what's actually going on, shall we? Jeremy Corbyn led a campaign for the release of 2 convicted terrorists who were jailed for their part in the car bombing of Israeli embassy in London and a Jewish charity bombing. Jawad Botma and Samir Al-Mili were convicted of conspiracy to cause explosions in the UK in 1996, which injured 20 people. They were jailed for 20 years. Both fought a lengthy campaign to clear their names, but their appeals were rejected by the Court of Appeal and the European Court of Human Rights. Remember, this went all the way to the European Union. So for all of you people that actually like the European Union, it's a case of they also decided that they were terrorists. Mr. Corbyn, the frontrunner in the Labour leadership race, has reportedly raised their cases as part of a long-running campaign to overturn the convictions. Because I'm going to run on my belief and not run on the fact of evidence. Interesting. Since running for leader, Mr. Corbyn has had to distance himself from a series of anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers. That's interesting. What was the date on this one again? What was the date on this? Let's have a quick look. It was finished on the 1st of September 2015. 2015, and already they are still saying at this point in time he had to distance himself from a series of anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers he shared a platform with during his years as a backbencher and anti-war campaigner. Interesting. So let's go through these figures, shall we? Among the figures, he has been linked with Paul Essine, and Holocaust denier, Fried Schaller, who has been accused of a virulent anti-Semitism, and the Muslim extremist Diab Abu Jahia. Yes. Just give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Right, so the reason why I went off for a quick instance is because I actually remembered the name Rahid Schaller. So I went and did a little bit of research, and I found a video of the reasons why I remember Rahid Schaller. And then I found a video of Jeremy Corbyn actually supporting him. So, without further ado, let's get on and watch this video, shall we?
And I'd like to start by saying how nice it is to be able to be in a normal room, right, Salah? Why was it that the media picked up the narrative that he was a dangerous man? Why did certain MPs get up in Parliament and demand that he be excluded from Britain? He is far from a dangerous man. He's a very honoured citizen. He represents his people extremely well, and his is a voice that must be heard.
أن القدس المبارك إن شاء الله قريبا وعلى الأبواب ستكون عاصمة عالمية للخلافة العالمية القادمة إن شاء الله. الخلافة ستملأ الأرض قسطا وعدلا بعد أن ملأتها أمريكا والمشروع الصهيوني والباطنية والرجعية والوثنية والصليبية، بعد أن ملأوا الأرض ظلما وجورا. الرحم القادم، العدل القادم، السلام العالمي قادم، الخير قادم، بقدوم الخلاف القادم القريب إن شاء الله تعالى، وعاصمتها القدس المباركة.
And I hereby renew my invitation to Sheikh Salah to come to Parliament, meet with me, meet with my colleagues, and you will be assured of a very warm welcome, and I look forward to giving you tea on the terrace because you deserve it.
So, yeah, this is the gentleman, Rahid Shala, that he's actually trying to defend in this actual story and has been accused of obvious anti-Semitism. And yet, this Jeremy Corbyn still supports him, still wants to make sure that he's defending him in court hearings and in tribunal hearings and things like that. And he wants to invite other people onto the Houses of Commons, the Houses of Parliament, and invite them onto the terraces to have a cup of tea regarding this gentleman. Yes, indeed. This is the reason why people claim that Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite. Doesn't prove that he is, but these are the reasons why people claim he is. Now let's get back to the story. So now we get back to the story, and Mr. Corbyn also once introduced members of Hamas and Hezbollah, terrorist bodies according to the United States, and around about 90% of the rest of the world, as friends. He says that this was a diplomatic language in the context of dialogue. Yes, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn has a good history of supporting terrorist actions and terrorists in general. If anybody wants to have a look at the IRA and Corbyn's support of the IRA. Now, I'm not getting into the political sense of the troubles and everything else of that. It is to go to the point that, unfortunately, for whatever reason, the IRA actually blew up and hurt innocent people in their attempts of their political terrorism. Now, this is not a ploy on them. This is not a ploy on anybody else. This is a point of pointing out that Jeremy Corbyn has supported terrorists for a very long time. If he feels that the cause is good enough and it's in his ideology, then he will support the killing of innocent people. Remember that as we move on. In February 2013, he wrote to London Metropolitan University in support of a bid by Butma to become a governor after his release from prison. So he was trying to get a convicted terrorist onto the board of governors of a university. Let that sink in for a moment. Somebody that has been actually convicted, not just by the courts in Ireland and the appeal courts in Ireland, but also by the courts of human rights in Europe, that they have been convicted of terrorism, and he wants him to work as a governor afterwards. How does that help or hinder your ideology, I wonder? So in a letter to a Vice-Chancellor written on House of Commons paper, he said, "I supported Jawad's case inside Parliament and outside, including meetings, demonstrations. Jawad's case is, I believe, a miscarriage of justice." Well, unfortunately, just because you believe it, Jeremy Corbyn, because of ideology that now sort of connects to yours in our land and in Europe, and decided that you're wrong and they're a terrorist. But don't worry. Let your ideology lead the way, sir. Mr. Corbyn signed 5 letters of support for Botma and Alima between 2002 and 2006, raising repeated issues of public interest and calling for their parole. Still trying to help convicted terrorists. He directly challenged David Blunkett, the Home Secretary, about the investigation into the bombing and asked whether fingerprints linked the pair to the attacks. Yes, Jeremy Corbyn, they did, otherwise they wouldn't have been convicted. But you know, logic. You also have paraphernalia that has also been confiscated and done because of bomb making. And it gets even more interesting. The bombings in July 1994 took place outside the Israeli embassy in Kingston, West London, and outside the then head office of the UJIA in Finchley, North London. Both Botma and Almina admitted having had possession, this is important, £5 of explosives which were used to make the bombs. Very important, yes? Very, very important. It kind of builds the idea that they were going to blow something up, right? But they denied they had intended to use the materials in Britain. So where were you going to blow up? And what were you going to blow up if you weren't going to do it in Britain? Why do you have explosives? I wonder why this was such an open and shut case. Hey, Halima said she had had 3 handguns and the explosives and guns were found in a lockup she rented. Interesting. So they admit to having possessions of £5 of explosives and she also admits to having guns. Interesting. I wonder what they were planning. The pair took their case to the Court of Appeal in 2001, which found that there was no reason to regard their convictions as unsafe. And they are the guns that were taken from her lockup with the fact of bullets that are also included as well. So the judges concluded the case against the appellants of complicity in these bombings was extremely strong. So extremely strong that they actually committed this. So this is from the courts, and also the European Court of Human Rights as well supported the Court of Appeal's decision, meaning that Jeremy Corbyn was supporting anti-Semitic terrorists. As I said before, doesn't prove he's an anti-Semite, but there's a reason why people call him fucking anti-Semitic. So, with that being said, let's move on to the next point, shall we? Right, hello there again. We're going to now move on to the fact that Corbyn copy and pasted Labour anti-Semitism apology from a previous article. Now don't take my word for it. This is from the Business Insider. And Jeremy Corbyn copied and pasted Labour anti-Semitism apology from previous article. I'm going to skip this little bit apart from the main key points. The Labour leader finally responded to multiple accusations of anti-Semitism in the newspaper article, but was criticised for appearing to lift 2 key passages from previous article he published in April. 2 passages from the Guardian piece published on Friday are almost identical to ones published in an Evening Standard article. Critics also pointed out that Corbyn timed the article to be published online on Friday evening for a Saturday newspaper. Now, follow it, meaning that observant Jews who are bound to observe Sabbath, meaning they don't do anything on the Sabbath, they don't work, they don't integrate, it's God's day, would not be able to engage with the article until the Sunday. So let's have a look at the actual comparison and what all the jibber jabber and moaning's about, shall we? So let's have a look at the actual comparison between the two, shall we? The evidence is clear enough. Labour staff have seen examples of Holocaust denial, crude stereotypes of Jewish bankers, conspiracy theories blaming 9/11 on Israel. Yes, you actually supported Rahid Shahala because of it. Remember? You gave him your goodwill and your character reference to say he was a good man. Funny how that changes. And even when one member who appeared to believe that Hitler had been misunderstood, and that would be Ken Livingstone. So let me be clear, people holding those views have no place in the Labour Party. There may be few, the number of cases over the past 3 years represents less than 0.1% of Labour's membership of more than 500,000, but 1 is too many. So let's move over to August and actually see what the differences are, or see how similar they are. So, Labour staff have seen examples of Holocaust denial, crude stereotypes, and Jewish bankers, conspiracy theories blaming 9/11 on Israel. That's almost identical. And even one individual who appeared to believe that Hitler had been misunderstood. Wow, that is identical, bar a sentence before it. People holding these views have no place in the Labour Party. There may be few, the number of cases, so exactly the same, bar 2 sentences. Interesting that he couldn't even be bothered to actually write a full article on what was actually going on. Though, I did want to point out that I do honestly actually think and feel that there's an actual reason behind this. There's an actual reason why anti-Semitism seems to be going up in Labour. And I want to prove my point by adding Mahid Nawaz into the mix and going into his ideas of what and the reasons why he thinks Labour Party is having a serious problem with anti-Semitism. So, come with me now. Well, I'm glad that you could come with me. What we're going to do is we're going to go into Majid's actual Twitter page, and we're going to be able to read from what he actually says. So we start off with Reid at UK's Labour's descent into anti-Semitic nastiness. Here are over 30 examples. Her Majesty's opposition under its leader, Corbyn, is a standing embarrassment, puppeteered by Trotskyists who pine for the return of communism and who have filled its ranks with Islamist sympathizers. And I think that is the most important part of that. Now, Labour themselves, if you have a look into a lot of their councillors and in some cases some of their mayors as well, just because that they have a religion doesn't mean that they're Islamist. But when you have some that do not even believe or take into account that the actual evidence proves that ISIS is actually an actual group, an actual terrorist organisation that radicalises children, and then for some reason Labour themselves put that councillor in charge of an initiative cross-party to be able to stop radicalisation, and yet she, the councillor for Birmingham, which I did a video on, actually completely and utterly, outrightly says that there is no such thing as ISIS. Completely and utterly outright says it. And you put her as a leader of stopping radicalisation in our country and abroad. And you wonder what's going on with that. So very, very, very quickly, we're going to move on to this, which is anti-Semitic row. Newcastle councillor will stand for Labour at local elections. Now, you may hear and see that, oh, well, it just looks like he's a normal person, right? Kind of. Let's just move down to here. All the links will be in the description box. So he put this little tweet up, which is, at the last planning committee meeting, I didn't vote for the new Mega Marks and Spencer store in Gosforth as a matter of principle. Now, why would a councillor stop Marks and Spencer's from coming into their area to create in a megastore, so to speak, and actually being able to create tons of jobs or hundreds of jobs, and actually being able to bring more initiative and everything else like that? Why would they stop it out of a principle? What principle do you think that they would have had for that? Well, I'll show you why. In it, screenshots of Mr. Ahid's Facebook page show him saying he voted against a planning application for a Marks and Spencer store on principle. Also saying the store was directly killing innocent Palestinian people by directly funding the Zionist regime. Remember that Labour actually endorsed him and actually were going to do stuff about it, investigated him, and didn't do anything about it. So according to the report, he liked posts referring to Zionists controlling the media and countries being in debt to the Rothschilds. A Labour North spokesman said, Diop Ahid has apologised for offence caused by his Facebook comments made in 2013, which he deleted at the time. He remains a Labour candidate in local elections. That's the point. That is literally the point, isn't it? The fact that all of these people and all of these instances are all happening under Labour's leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, and yet he is not doing anything about it. He is not suspending the people that are actually involved. He is not forming any sort of form of accusations that are actually going forward. There's no criminal investigations, there's no suspensions, there's nothing. All the people that have done this anti-Semitic rhetoric, that have been pushing this forward, have been told that they need to apologise. That have been told that they need to just say that you're sorry and everything will be fine. Whatever happened to taking responsibility for what you've said? Whatever happens to the actual point of what goes on? The views that are expressed by the point of freedom of speech, but also in a point of freedom of speech, you have to be held accountable by what you have said and what you stand by. Jokes are different to made by statements. Statements themselves are what you actually think and feel, and not playing on personal stereotypes. Now remember, most of these have been done on their principles. Remember that word, principle. I cannot do it on a set of principle. The principle that I believe that the Jews completely and utterly control the world, that they're in debt to the Rothschilds and everything else like that, and all the other conspiracy theories that go along with that crap. So yeah, I'm going to leave you with this final little clip from Mr. Mann himself, in actual fact, that goes on to explain in a little bit more colourful rhetoric than what I would have used, especially in the House of Commons. But let's see what he has to say, shall we?
And that's why I took on the role 13 years ago, chairing the all-party group. I didn't expect today, when Labour members stand in solidarity with our Jewish colleagues and with the Jewish community, for not just no solidarity, but to be targeted by an organisation called Momentum, which has happened to all of us who stood in solidarity. But worse than that, explicitly targeting Jewish members of the Parliamentary Labour Party because they are Jewish. That is what is going on at the moment. I didn't expect, when I took on this voluntary cross-party role, for my wife to be sent by a Labour Marxist anti-Semite, a dead bird, through the post. I didn't expect my son, after an Islamist death threat, to open the door in the house on his own as a schoolboy to the bomb squad. I didn't expect my wife, in the last few weeks, from a leftist anti-Semite in response to the demonstration, to be threatened with rape. I didn't expect my daughter, similarly, and have to be rung up in the last few weeks by Special Branch to check out her movements in this country. No, I didn't expect any of that. And I'll tell you the principles we have operated on. The very first speech I made on this 13 years ago in this chamber, every party in this house should look after its own backyard first. And I've said that repeatedly on hundreds of occasions since. And I have, specifically in private letters to every party in this House, repeatedly challenged anti-Semitism, all parties.
So with that all being said, I think it's best for me to say au revoir, farewell, adieu, auf Wiedersehen, I'll see you all again. But first of all, don't forget to like this video, don't forget to subscribe to this video, and don't forget to check out my new videos. See you all again real soon. Bye-bye for now.